Hello and welcome. This is part 15 of 32 of my NFL ranking series, and for this one we have the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns finished last year with 8 wins, and when it comes to this year, there's a lot of question marks as to what's going on with this team. Because when it came to last year, Baker started off the year pretty much. I think he got hurt about like week 2, and then he had a torn labrum in his shoulder, and then I think he had another issue with his shoulder as well, along with the labrum. I can't remember what it is exactly, but so basically, he went from torn labrum, had another injury, to where he basically tried to fight and play the rest of the year, and it seemed like that place was basically just falling apart. Because if you look at the organization, there was some turmoil with the coaching in him. There's some turmoil with the higher ups and the coaching in him. So there was just a lot of issues going around. And there was the whole Odell Beckham thing where Odell Beckham basically was like asking out, and then his dad put out the tapes of Baker being bad, and then people didn't really come to his defense then. And it's just crazy because if you look at the dynamic of this team, Baker made this team pretty good. And then basically he won them a playoff game, and then now they basically all wanted out on him after one really bad season. It's very interesting. Cleveland has always been bad, and they finally get someone that's somewhat good at quarterback, and they're ready to move on. Now, to be fair, they did get Deshaun Watson, and he is a real upgrade to that position. Now, will he play this year or will he play again? That's to be determined, but, for now, the fact that they do have Deshaun Watson, and they got some other new names as well on offense and on defense, this team, if Deshaun Watson plays all year, this could be a really dangerous team. Like I said, they finished with 8 wins last year, and they were in a really tough division. The Steelers had a lot of wins as well. The Bengals were in there. The Ravens had an all right year, even with all the injuries. And, just looking at this, they had a really good, Baker had some good numbers. He had some good games here and there. But overall, just hit with the injuries and then all of the turmoil and then the whole issue with Odell Beckham. And then there's the one game against the Steelers where he threw it hundreds of times. And he was like, the coach was setting me up for failure because he was basically letting T.J. Watt set the sack record on him and all that. There's just so much fight and turmoil in this team. Because they had some impressive wins throughout the season. They beat the Bengals bad week 1. They ended up beating Denver's not that impressive. I take that back. They beating the Bengals that 1 week was really impressive, and and then they also beat Baltimore as well. And then other than that, if you look at it, they lost to a lot of the better teams that they played. The Chargers game, I remember that from week 5. That was a really good game. That was really close. And then they split with the Steelers, and that basically I think that last win by the Steelers is basically what edged them into the playoffs. But but due to all the turmoil and due to all the stuff that's happened, this team basically got like a rehaul on offense. Not completely, but a little bit. For example, they added in Deshaun Watson on a guaranteed contract after all the allegation stuff that's going on with him. They still have Nick Chubb, still Kareem Hunt. They have Donovan Peoples-Jones now, Amari Cooper, and it looks like David Bell's going to be their slot. Which, if that's the case, then it'll be Amari Cooper, Peoples-Jones, and David Bell. And then if you look at the defense, they still have a lot of the good names like Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney back. They still have Greg Newsome and Greedy Williams. Looking at this team, this is going to be a really good team. It's just the big thing that's looming with this team right now is the whole Deshaun Watson situation. They guaranteed this guy a lot of money to be their quarterback, and they basically were out on Baker, so they moved on from him. And due to them moving on from him, now that if you look at it, it's basically if Deshaun Watson doesn't play all season, they have a full season to Jacoby Brissett. If Deshaun Watson misses 8 games, then that's half a season with Jacoby, half a season with Deshaun. But yeah, I just basically just waiting for this Deshaun Watson situation to sit out, because I think there's still no answer as of today. At the time of recording this, there is no determination of the whole Deshaun Watson situation. It's just the way I've been thinking about it a little bit more and more with all the stuff I've been reading, and it's if Calvin Ridley sat down for a year because he placed a sports bet, but with all this situation, they're only going to give him 8 games. I think that's going to be a really bad look on the NFL. I'm not saying that I'm not saying either situation was handled right or wrong. I'm just saying comparatively, if you're going to give a guy a year for sports betting, you would have to assume that this is about a year or something. They could be less because, like I said, some of the lawsuits are getting settled. Some are basically some are getting settled on their table. Some are not. There's still a few active. This whole situation with Deshaun Watson is just kind of crazy. And there's a rumor that this could happen. Obviously I don't think it's going to happen, but there's a chance he gets suspended next year after all the courts and everything takes place, or he could be in the middle of the season. But I don't think they would let him play until that point. So it's just going to be interesting to see, because basically this whole team, like, this is a good team, but they're basically on Deshaun Watson. Because, yeah, I mean, looking at their schedule, if you look at the first, like, 8 weeks, like, if he does get suspended 8 weeks, I mean, this team doesn't really have that much of a tough schedule. I mean, like, Carolina now with Baker week 1, that's going to be really, really exciting to see how that goes. I mean, yeah, like New York, Pittsburgh is kind of all right now, but their hardest games in the first 8 weeks are the Bengals, Ravens, and Chargers. So if you look at that, I mean, New England will probably be a little bit of a tough matchup too, just because of Bill Belichick and everything. But if you look at them, I mean, they have a chance to go like 4. They could go. They should easily be able to go 4-4 with the roster they have, but it's just going to depend on the quarterback. So yeah, basically, I mean, like I said, like once they start their back end of the schedule, I mean, they have a tough 3 games opening out. Then it gets a little bit easier with Houston, and then it's a little tough down the end of the stretch, but it's nothing like too not manageable. So if I can find a way to get Deshaun Watson towards the back end of the season, this could be like a sneaky good team. It's just when it comes down to this team, like how good they're going to be, it's all just based on Deshaun Watson. I mean, like really, I know it sounds like a broken record, but like with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they have a really good running game. They have a pretty good O-line. I'm pretty sure the O-line's top 10 if I'm not mistaken, even with the loss or 2 it had. But I mean, like this is a good team. It's just like the reason I have them so low, or I guess the reason I have them like towards the back end, towards the middle, or even like the middle of the pack, is just because like truly based on the fact that we still don't know how many games Deshaun Watson's going to miss, and that's basically the big key to this team is if they can find a way to get Deshaun Watson to like only miss like 6 games or so, then this team could have some huge upside. When it comes to the Browns, though, like I said, I mean, it's more of this whole thing is kind of just sitting on Deshaun Watson's shoulders, waiting for him to be good. I mean, Deshaun Watson when he was playing was a top 3 quarterback, and you could tell the Texans franchise. I mean, he was like they weren't much of anything. They had some all right players, but they weren't really much of anything, and he made that team a playoff team. So it's going to be interesting to see with like a good team around him what they're willing to do. The fact that they paid him this much money without knowing his suspension is crazy. I mean, I get the Browns were in need of looking for a quarterback, but I mean they were really like this could backfire if he doesn't play at all. And I mean, it's going to be a big what if game basically because like if they lose, they already lost Baker. They gave up on Baker basically because if I had to pick obviously in a vacuum, I would pick Deshaun Watson over Baker. I would say easily. Because just like even though Baker does have the playoff history a little bit, I just like Deshaun Watson. I believe is a little bit younger and he just has a lot more upside with what has been around him. But regardless, I mean, the Browns basically just moved on from Baker and they're ready to take Deshaun Watson, and that's a big risk with this whole suspension looming over him. Because if they lose him for the year, this could be basically like almost a wasted year for the Browns because of how good their roster is and everything. So when it comes to the Browns, I mean, this team could literally go from like being a top like 5 team in the league to a bottom 5 team in the league, just solely based on are they going to have Deshaun Watson, and if they don't have Deshaun Watson, what can Jacoby Brissett do to help them win a game?